Hey guys, tonight we step into the stone-laid walkways of ancient Persepolis, where the sun hits like a hammer and the marble walls reflect the heat right back at you. You're here to begin the worst first day of work you'll ever have serving in the palace of the Persian great king himself. The buildings tower over you, cut from the mountains and carved with rows of noble faces that all look extremely disappointed in you already. Your tunic's itchy, your sandals are too small, and you're trying not to look at the guy scrubbing bird droppings off a golden column and crying. This is not a position you applied for. You were selected, which is basically ancient HR4. You were available, breathing, and not already in jail. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive just before sunrise. The air is still cool, but the palace's walls are already warming under the first light. As you approach the gate of all nations, you pass carved bulls, the size of houses, and they seem to watch you with a judgmental glare. The guards, bronze-skinned, heavily armed, and definitely not morning people, barely acknowledge your presence as they open one of the smaller service doors. Inside, a steward with the emotional range of a dry carrot thrusts a clay tablet into your hand and mutters, "Your unit for floor 3, or sweaty, or noticeable." It's your first taste of the Achaemenid royal court. Elegant, brutal, and obsessed with hierarchy. Everyone has a rank, even the feather. Unit 4, it turns out, is a ragtag group of new recruits. You're joined by a terrified boy from Lydia, a woman who speaks 6 languages but is still assigned to mop duty, and a suspiciously well-groomed man who claims he used to serve King Croesus before that whole conquest thing. There's no welcome speech, just a chorus of barking orders, and a quick inventory check. You're given a worn linen robe to hair ties, and a scroll explaining how not to get executed before lunch. Your first assignment: sweeping the hall of 100 columns. Easy, right? Except the columns are so tall they vanish into the ceiling shadows, and the floor is covered in crushed flower petals, sandal prints, and somehow glittering mica dust that clings to your skin like ancient judgment. Don't forget to bow to the statue of Darius, says one supervisor. But not the one of Zo. That one is in a mood. You're still not sure if that was a joke. You sweep and sweep. Every time you finish a section, someone walks right across it. The sweeping is symbolic, ceremonial. You're not supposed to clean, you're supposed to be seen cleaning. Appearances here are everything. Even your posture is political. Too upright, you look arrogant. Too hunched, you look lazy. So you aim for that perfect, respectfully exhausted stance, and pray nobody important notices your blistered heel bleeding into your sandal. Then a trumpet blares. Somewhere, a door creaks open, and murmurs rise like steam. The king is rising, someone whispers, and everyone freezes. You freeze. Even the birds outside seem to stop mid. When the great king wakes, an invisible chain of actions begins. A baker lights a fire in the kitchen. A eunuch places gold-threaded slippers by the royal bed. Another servant tosses scented resin into a brazier. You're in charge of making sure the mosaic tiles outside the private hall sparkle like dew on sapphire. Unfortunately, your sponge is made from what feels like the back of a cactus. A senior official strides past you, eyes scanning the hallway like a hawk with insomnia. His beard is curled in perfect symmetry, his robe stitched with crimson thread, and his forehead glistens with exactly 1 drop of holy sandalwood oil. He stops, looks at your corner, says nothing. You panic. You scrub harder. You scrub so hard, a small piece of tile chips off. You casually nudge it under a pillar base and pretend it never happened. Welcome to court life. Mainstream historians agree that the Achaemenid royal palace operated like a city within a city. Thousands of servants, soldiers, artisans, scribes, and cooks worked in shifts, each assigned to micro-tasks designed for maximum control and surveillance. The place ran smoother than a military parade until someone misplaced a robe, or tripped on a lion sculpture, or, like you, forgot to bow in the direction of a bronze urn. Not that you get a break. Mid-morning, you're reassigned to water-carrying duty. You lug ferry of cold spring water up 3 levels, through mosaic halls, into private chambers. One misstep, and you're mopping instead of pouring. Someone drops a goblet in front of the Hall of Echoes, and is demoted to outdoor pit latrine duty for a month. Fringe detail. Palace corridors were said to be perfumed with vaporized myrrh using hollow pipes embedded in the walls. So yes, the entire palace smelled better than you ever will. And speaking of smells, someone spills lavender oil in the harem wing and blames the wind. You just nod slowly and walk away. By late afternoon, your feet are humming, your arms jelly, and your stomach a distant memory. You're not allowed to eat near the royal halls, but you are allowed to carry trays of fresh figs and honey cakes past your own hungry face. The cooks whistle as you go by. You're not sure if it's encouragement or mockery. Historians still argue whether palace servants were allowed even a glimpse of the king's face. Your trainer tells you while chewing on a date pit, better not to look, not even accidentally, just gaze at the floor and think about your mother. As dusk falls, and you finally return to your quarter of the servant, dormitory shared with 19 others, you collapse onto a thin reed, inhale the aroma of boiled lentils, and try to flex your fingers back into shape. Welcome to the royal palace. You made it through day one. You wake before the sun, again, not because you're diligent, because someone dumped cold water on your head. It's your unit overseer, a man who hasn't blinked since you arrived yesterday and speaks in a tone that makes you feel like an undercooked goat shank. Up, dress fast. The robes have to breathe before the king does. This morning, your task sounds deceptively pleasant. Wardrobe duty. You imagined something like folding silk and admiring your reflection in golden mirrors. Wrong. This is a high-stakes ritual involving sweat, incense, and linen cloth that costs more than your entire family's combined life earnings. Also, you're expected to know the difference between ceremonial gold thread and formal parade silver. You do not. Your first stop is the washing chamber. The robes have already been cleaned by the textile workers, some of whom are enslaved, others merely terrified, but you are responsible for the oiling, smoothing, scenting, and hanging of the garments. You're handed a smooth stick of polished cedarwood, a pouch of crushed saffron, and a clay pot filled with olive oil that smells faintly of basil and despair. You start oiling a tunic with careful hands. Not too much greasy robes are an offense punishable by humiliation. Not too little dry creases are read as disrespect. As you gently press out the wrinkles, a steward appears behind you and sniffs dramatically. Wrong lobe, he says. You pause. The earring. The gold hoop with the turquoise bead. It's for the left ear. You polished it for the right. You blink. He's not wearing it yet, which is why it must be correct. Now, do you want the king to walk out with a twisted ear? You almost ask if that's a real thing, but something tells you not to, so you polish it again for the correct ear. This is your first taste of just how specific and symbolic fashion is in the palace. Mainstream records show that Persian royal attire was not just for vanity, it was layered with messages about power, status, divinity, and mood. A different belt could signal war, a darker robe, mourning, striped sleeves. Now that's a diplomatic incident waiting to happen. And speaking of incidents, today the great king is set to meet an envoy from India, which means one thing: a lot of feathers, peacock plumes, dyed ostrich down, even one robe hemmed in shimmering crane quills that rustle every time someone breathes near it. You're tasked with brushing each individual feather using a delicate fan made of baby camel ashes. You wish that were a joke. Nearby, another servant is weaving tiny coins into a ceremonial girdle while reciting prayers backward because apparently, the last time someone did it forward, a noble tripped and blamed bad luck on symmetrical knots. Halfway through the morning, your hands covered in glittery dust, you're summoned to assist in the dressing chamber. This is where the king prepares himself. You're not allowed to look up, or breathe too loudly, or drop anything. The room is enormous, gleaming floors, fragrant air, a silence so thick you can hear the flick of a robe being shaken. The headdresser is a terrifying woman named Tiamra, whose voice could slice granite. She orders you to lay out a tray of armbands. You, not in that order, she hisses. You switch 2 of them. Still wrong. You switch 3 more. Now it's disrespectful and out of season. You consider throwing yourself down the mosaic steps, but instead, you just quietly rearrange them again, your palms sweating. Eventually, she nods. The final robe selected today is crimson, with gold trim and delicate stitching of a lion devouring a bull. Very aggressive. Very, don't mess with us. It takes 5 people to lift it. You are person number 5. You all move in silent choreography, gently placing it across an ivory stand shaped like a kneeling servant. You try not to imagine that being literal. Historians still argue whether these servants like you were fully enslaved, paid in some form, or allowed to move between roles. Some records suggest a strange halfway status. Technically not free, but given food, clothing, and the honor of watching someone else eat figs all day. Once the robe is secured, you're ordered to take the used garments to the airing chamber. It's located on the upper balcony, where warm desert wind keeps fabrics from molding. There, you find yourself gently pinning royal undergarments to sun-dried ropes, while next to you, a boy sings softly about bread. You hum along until a guard passes and gives you a look that suggests humming is for aristocrats. Your final task before midday break is to inspect the ceremonial sandals for wear. They're covered in lapis lazuli and ivory, with soles softer than your mattress. You find a single scuff and point it out. The shoemaker gasps, rushes over, and kisses your forehead in gratitude. Apparently, you've just saved him from punishment by premature retirement, which is a euphemism for being reassigned to toilet fume ventilation. Fringe tidbit: some Persian royal sandals had soles embossed with symbols meant to bless every step. Others had curse words etched into the bottom, intended to walk upon enemies in a deeply petty act of spiritual domination. As the morning ends, you slump against a pillar, fingers still twitching from folding, brushing, oiling, and adjusting. You've learned that in Persepolis, clothing isn't just cloth, it's power, it's prophecy, and if you mess it up, it's pain. The sun is higher now, the marble halls gleaming white with heat, and your stomach growls again. Someone tosses you half a date from across the corridor. You catch it, nod in thanks, and savor it like it's a royal banquet. Congratulations, you dressed a king and survived. Tomorrow, you'll learn how to undress one, and that's a whole other scandal. You don't remember falling asleep. One minute you're blinking at the ceiling shadows of the servant quarters, and the next, you're being shaken awake by someone whispering, "You're late." He's already moving. This is bad. Very bad. The great king has stirred earlier than expected, and that throws everything into a kind of ceremonial panic. It's like the world's quietest emergency, people running without looking like they're running. Orders being barked in voices so low they're practically and an entire army of sleepy-eyed attendants scrambling to look serene. Your assignment today is deceptively simple. Do nothing. Specifically, you must stand in the Hall of Echoes as part of a silent procession that lines the walkway the king uses to pass into his morning audience chamber. You are to stand straight, hold a gold-tipped staff that you're not allowed to drop, move, or twirl, and above all remain absolutely, impossibly, painfully silent. It sounds relaxing, until you realize it's 5 hours of this. Without sitting, without leaning, without blinking too much, lest it seems suspicious. The marble floor is cold against your sandaled feet, and you feel a single drop of sweat slide down your spine. You try not to think about it, or the staff that suddenly feels heavier by the minute, or the fact that you can hear your own heartbeat bouncing off the walls. Mainstream records describe the Persian court as intensely posture, stillness, and silence were all carefully choreographed to reinforce divine hierarchy. If you speak out of turn, look the wrong way, or sneeze at the wrong time, you're not just rude, you're sacrilegious. You watch a beetle crawl across the base of a nearby pillar. You envy the beetle. It gets to move. A noble glides past. You don't dare look up, but you can feel the trailing hem of their robe sweep the air behind them like a breeze of wealth. Somewhere behind you, a man shifts his weight too loudly, and there's a soft TSK from one of the enforcers stationed in the shadows. Now you're terrified of shifting your weight, or breathing, or existing. Historians still argue whether servants in the king's path were trained in special breathing rhythms to avoid drawing attention. Someone once said in training, you'd scoffed then. Now you're wondering if you should have taken that more seriously. About 2 hours in, your arms begin to tremble from holding the staff. The gold is cold, but the handle gets slippery. You adjust your grip, at least you think it's imperceptibly. A shadow looms. Someone stops your fingers. Spread them. The voice is so quiet it might be a breeze. You widen your grip along the staff's shaft. A pause. Then silence again. They move on. You try not to weep. At the far end of the hall, incense rises in curling streams, frankincense and myrrh, burned slowly in ornate brass dishes. The smoke is meant to cleanse the air before the king walks through. You try not to cough. A single cough got a servant reassigned to camel stable detail last week, and camels do not forgive. Time slows. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a gong. The king is entering the hall. You do not move. You do not breathe. You do not exist. You feel the pressure shift in the room, like the air itself is bowing. His footsteps are silent, his robe whispering against the floor. You sense, more than see, the glow of his presence. Gold, red, ivory, beard like an oiled thunderclap. And then, just as suddenly, he's gone. The spell breaks. Everyone exhales in unison, a soft wave of relief. The staff in your hand feels like molten lead. Your knees wobble. Your throat is parched. Break time, someone says gently, and it sounds like a lullaby. You head out of the hall into a side corridor and collapse onto a reed stool. Another servant offers you a tiny clay cup of barley water. It's warm and bitter and tastes like a soggy sandal, but you gulp it like it's vintage wine. Fringe detail. Some scholars believe the Hall of Echoes was engineered not just for acoustics but surveillance. A whisper at one end could be heard clearly at the other, especially useful if the king wanted to hear how quiet his quiet servants really were. You think about that as you sip and listen to the room settle back into eerie.com. And then, your break ends, because now, it's pantry duty. You're assigned to the Silent Wing, a place so quiet, it makes your last job feel like a market festival. It's where sacred oils and spices are stored. The room is lined with jars, pots and urns each, labeled in tiny, fussy Aramaic. You are not to touch anything unless ordered. You are not to drop anything. If you do, you will be made to sweep a grain courtyard with a peacock feather until the day you die. Your supervisor, a man named Nabu who has mastered the art of blinking one eye at a time, hands you a long list written on parchment. You are to retrieve 3 drops of violet oil, a pinch of powdered cinnamon, 1 wax-sealed bottle of cedar tears, and a sprig of saffron yellow only, no red threads. You gather the items with the focus of a man defusing a bomb. Every pot looks identical. Every smell overwhelms you, and just when you think you've nailed it, you discover you've picked Indian saffron instead of Median saffron. Apparently, one is for calming divine spirits, and the other is for softening goatskin. You switch it just in time. The rest of the day is spent moving soundlessly from room to room, always trailing someone more important than you, always behind the scenes, never speaking. The halls of Persepolis are lined with gold, but you begin to realize that for you, this palace is more cage than castle. As night falls, you return to your quarters and whisper a greeting to your bunkmate, who simply raises a finger to his lips. You nod, silently. The habit has settled into your bones. You curl onto your mat and fall asleep mid-blink, still holding your breath. You wake up hungry. Not just missed breakfast, hungry palace servant hungry, which is a specific kind of gnawing, low-level starvation where your body's convinced it smelled roast lamb, but your stomach knows it only inhaled a whiff of someone else's plate. Today's assignment seems even crueler by comparison. You're helping set up the royal feast. Feast days in Persepolis are a performance of imperial generosity. To the outside world, the king feeds ambassadors, nobles, and visiting royalty with an open hand. He appears like a god of abundant syrup-soaked fruits, spiced wines, and golden bread stacked like treasure. It's opulence as foreign policy. You, of course, get none of it. Your job is simple. Carry the dishes, refresh the goblets, smile at no one, and stand absolutely still when dignitaries walk past even. You start in the kitchens, which, by the way, are not quaint rooms with a single oven and a grandma-style cook. No, this is an underground culinary fortress. Fires blaze, meats turn on rotating spits, the size of wagon wheels, and spices cloud the air so thickly you sneeze yourself dizzy. Everyone is yelling in different dialects: Silamite, Old Persian, Median, Aramaic. You get called onion hands at least twice. You're not sure it's a compliment. A cook thrusts a basket of freshly baked flatbread into your arms. It's warm and smells like perfection. You almost cry. You almost nibble. You almost lose your hand when another cook sees you hesitate. Touch your mouth and I'll assign you to rat-catching duty in the wheat pits, he growls. You nod solemnly and scurry off. Fringe detail. Some feasts featured not just local dishes but entire platters inspired by the outer provinces. Egyptian pomegranate sauces, Indian cinnamon sweets, a culinary map of the empire laid out in bite-sized symbolism. You enter the hall of pillared harmony, where the feast will unfold. The ceiling vanishes above you in smoky shadow, held up by columns carved with lions, bulls, and strangely, judgmental griffins. Rugs are laid out in layers, each hand-woven with geometric precision. The tables aren't exactly tables either, more like cushioned platforms where nobles recline, drape themselves in silk, and sip from goblets wider than your face. You're given a silver tray stacked with dried apricots and honeyed pistachios and told to float, not stomp. you really do. But a noble from Lydia glares as you pass, and you realize your ankles do kind of squeak when you walk. You end up stationed beside a wine bearer from Sardis named Bazu. He's older, has a permanent eyebrow raise, and whispers under his breath like a jaded uncle. Rule 1, he mutters, don't look at the food. Rule 2, definitely don't smell the food. Rule 3, if someone offers you something, it's probably a test. Decline it, bow twice, and tell them your stomach is already blessed by the aromas of the king's grace. You nod, then he immediately snatches a grape off a platter. While no one's looking and winks, as the guests pour in, you see the variety of the empire in action. Medes in tall heads, Babylonians in shimmering robes, Scythian warriors with their ridiculous fur hats. Every movement is deliberate. The music starts soft lyres, flutes, the faint tapping of a hand drum, and then the food comes in. Trays of roast boar with orange glaze, goose stuffed with saffron rice, fish so delicately seared it could make a priest cry. Even the vegetables look smug. You hold a pitcher of wine and pretend not to smell the dates sizzling in butter nearby. The king enters, everyone freezes, then Balzor reclines even lower. He's in full regalia today, robe embroidered with golden wings, beard oiled to perfection, sandals that practically glow. You remain still. He passes close enough that your arm hairs rise. The scent of his personal oil blends cinnamon, sandalwood, and something smoky lingers like royalty in the air. Then the show begins. He raises a goblet. Toasts are exchanged. Dishes paraded. Jokes are told in a dozen languages. You keep moving. Refill goblets. Replace plates. Smile just enough to not look bitter, but not so much that you look deranged. One servant grinned too wide once and was reassigned to lemon peeling duty. For life, you nearly drop a silver pitcher when a satrap from Egypt snaps his fingers and points at your tray. He wants more rose pudding. You don't even know what rose pudding is, but you nod, back away slowly, and sprint like your sandals are on fire to the kitchens. When you return, he doesn't even look at you, just takes the dish and sets it aside. You wonder if he does that with people too. Mainstream historians agree that these feasts were a display of the empire's wealth and contraleach, guests seated by rank, each dish part of the choreography. Even the placement of wine jugs was strategic. Sweeter wines to the east, drier to the west, symbolizing the arc of the empire from sunrise to sunset. Your shift ends, not with a dismissal, but with exhaustion, so total that someone literally takes the tray from your arms as you sway. You're escorted out through a side door, down a long corridor that smells like spilt pomegranate juice and burnt cumin. Your hands are sticky, your knees ache, your stomach has learned the true meaning of longing. You reach the servant quarters and collapse onto your mat, still tasting the idea of food in the air. And then, because this palace loves Iaranis, someone throws you a crust of old bread from the upper hall. It lands beside you like a sad little comet. You chew it in the dark. The banquet was a success. You fed half the world today, except yourself. The sun isn't even a rumor on the horizon when you're roused from sleep by the sharp clap of hands. You jolt upright, mouth dry, knees cracking, wondering briefly if you're dead and this is the quiet part of the afterlife. Nope, you're on bed linen detail, specifically royal bedtime preparation and sleep sanitation protocol. You thought this might be the easiest assignment so far. After all, how hard can it be to make a bed? Oh, you sweet, sweet fool. First of all, the royal bed is not a bed. It's a sacred sleep platform, elevated on 4 ivory legs shaped like lion paws, inlaid with lapis lazuli and mother of... The mattress is stuffed with goose feathers and possibly regret. You're not even allowed to touch it directly unless you've passed something called a purity odor inspection. You haven't. Your job is to handle the linen, which is not just linen, it's ceremonial fabric blessed by fire priest, woven with threads soaked in floral resin and ironed under obsidian slabs. You're handed a large flat sheet, 2 pillow wraps, 1-foot veil, and the dreaded no one explains what that is. You just nod and bow a lot. Tiamra is here again, the terrifying head of textiles. She inspects your every fold like it's a matter of national security. Corners should kiss, she mutters, not battle. You're not sure what that means, but you redo them anyway. The process is slow, meditative, maddening. The sheet must be folded with 7 breaths between each motion. You count them awkwardly. 1, 2, 3. Oh, H. No, I sneezed. Start over. You hear Tiamra inhale behind you. You feel your future evaporate. Mainstream sources say Persian royals believed in energetic flow. During sleep, bedding had to be arranged to encourage good dreams and discourage evil spirits from nesting in wrinkles. That's right, spiritual wrinkle prevention. You're not just folding sheets, you're fighting ghosts. Once the linens are perfectly placed, the pillows must be fluffed in a specific order. Left, then right, then center. With 2 soft punches and a ceremonial press. You punch a little too hard. The pillow wheezes. You apologize to it. Then comes the oiling. The bed's oiling. A senior eunuch applies a mixture of almond, myrrh, and rose oil along the 4 bedposts, chanting quietly as he does so. You assist by lighting a small flame that burns camphor to cleanse the room. The scent makes your eyes water. A drop of oil lands on your sleeve. You try to wipe it off Diamrases. You now owe her 3 hours of silk on your rest day. Fringe detail. Some Persian kings reportedly slept with a small idol of Anahita, goddess of purity and water, placed beside the bed. One of your fellow servants claims to have accidentally sat on it once. He hasn't spoken since. Finally, it's time for the turndown. This is done only moments before the king enters his bed. You are to bow in reverse, exit through the side curtain, and leave the room smelling faintly of lilies and sandalwood, which would be fine, except the 5 eunuchs in charge of pillow positioning are fighting again. Apparently one of them believes the right bolster should face southwest because that's the direction of peace. Another insists it should face northwest because of a dream they had. The third just wants everyone to stop yelling, because the king is on his way. You stand there holding a folded nightrobe and pretending you're invisible. A steward bursts in. He's walking now. Everyone freezes. You move into emergency mode. Bolsters are slapped into place. Robes draped perfectly over a jade hook. The idol placed precisely where it always goes. A final puff of scent is fanned through the air, and then he arrives. The king, he says nothing, just glides through the chamber in his loose robe, oiled and glowing like some divine furnace. He barely looks around. One servant steps forward with a warm cloth for his hands. Another offers a cooling stone for the temples. You kneel with the robe. He takes it. Doesn't thank you, but that's a good sign. If he hated it, he'd say so. He disappears behind a silk screen. Moments later, his personal priest nods once. You may leave. Outside, you exhale for the first time in 5 minutes. Your tunic clings to your back. Someone offers you a sip of cooled barley milk. You take it. You are now, officially, one of the few who have survived Persian royal turn-down service. You shuffle back toward your own quarters, where your bed is a mat over old stone, and your pillow is a sack of date seeds wrapped in used linen. You look at it fondly. No oils, no incense, no fighting eunuchs, just sleep. You lie down and pull your blanket around you. Then you remember. You have silk rethreading duty before dawn. You've grown into your pillow. You don't even make it to the silk room before chaos finds you. You're halfway through rethreading a stubborn panel of brocade when a steward appears. Eyes sharp, breath short. You come. Laundry wing. Now. You blink. I'm not. Now. And that's how you end up in the deepest, most humid, most drama-filled part of the palace. The laundry chambers. These aren't cozy little basins and washboards. This is a sprawling underground warren of heated vats, steam tunnels, drying holes, and increasingly unhinged whisper networks. You'd think washing clothes would be simple. It is not. Especially not when you're working on the king's wardrobe. A grim-looking overseer hands you a linen tunic still damp with floral rinse water and says, "Fold it." With reverence. Then she narrows her eyes. And pray it isn't one of those again. You don't know what she means until you begin unfolding the garment. There, stitched faintly into the inner seam of the collar, is something odd. A symbol, tiny, hidden, but unmistakably deliberate. You lean in. It's not Persian. It's not anything you recognize. You glance around. The other workers are scrubbing and folding as if nothing is happening, but the tension hangs in the air like wet wool. Don't look too long, the overseer says, quietly, suddenly at your shoulder. And don't say anything out loud. You nod slowly, because now you understand. The royal laundry is crawling with secrets. Mainstream historians agree that palace servants often acted as unofficial intelligence agents. Clothing moved between every corner of the court, from generals to concubines to foreign avars, and, well, a linen hem was just as good as parchment, especially when the message could be stitched, bleached, hidden, and if necessary boiled away. Historians still argue whether the laundry was part of the formal intelligence system. Your bunkmate once muttered, scrubbing wine from a sash. But we all know the best gossip travels with soap suds. You return the tunic to its basket and pretend nothing happened. But an hour later, the room shifts again. A supervisor storms in, face like carved stone. A royal towel is missing. The entire laundry hall goes still. One woman drops a drying wand. Someone gasps. The embroidered towel, with a lotus trim. Last seen after the Egyptian envoy's bath. That's bad. Very bad. See, embroidered towels aren't just decorative. They're status markers, specific symbols for specific visitors, specific messages embedded in seemingly innocent swirls. You don't just lose one, and you definitely don't lose one given to a foreign dignitary. You're all ordered to stop what you're doing and search. You comb through the steaming shelves, baskets of robes, urns of lavender, rinse water. You check behind the drying reeds, beneath the soaking benches, nothing. Then someone finds a scrap-torn linen, still damp, bearing the edge of a lotus design. Panic. You're all herded into a side chamber, the quiet room, and told to sit. No speaking, no moving, just wait. It's punishment by atmosphere. 30 minutes in, a steward enters and starts asking questions. Did you handle the envoy's laundry? Did you see a towel with triple-stitch threading? Do you have family in Memphis? The questions seem random, but they're not. They're probing. You answer honestly, quietly. You mention that you did fold a towel yesterday, but you're sure it went into the hot oil rinse. Maybe someone else moved it. The steward stares at you for a long moment. Oil rinse, he says slowly. Who ran it? Everyone turns toward an old man named Parser, who's been folding robes here since Cyrus the Great was probably in diapers. He frowns. I did. But there were no lotus towels. A tense silence follows. And then a younger boy speaks up. I saw one. It had a golden edge. I thought it was for polishing. You feel a collective shudder. Polishing rags are burned after use. No one speaks. Within moments, a messenger is sent to the head of internal protocol. The boy is taken aside, gently, but firmly. He will not be, but he will likely be sent to read-record copying duty for the next 2 months, which means no sunlight and lots of papyrus splinters. The rest of you are given strict new rules. From now on, all high-ranked towels must be tagged and double. You are to memorize each mark. Failing that, you're to report any suspicious garments, even if that means risking suspicion yourself. You nod and return to work, folding with newfound caution. As you smooth out a sleeveless robe belonging to one of the Queen's cousins, you notice it's stitched not just with gold but with red thread along the hem, decorative, but also potentially coded. You don't ask, you just make sure it's folded so the red doesn't show. Fringe detail. Some scholars believe royal laundries held records of every item washed and who it belonged to, allowing palace officials to track political movement based on sweat, wear, and even perfume residue. By late afternoon, you're exhausted, overheated, and mildly traumatized. You've folded 36 garments, rinsed 8 more, and memorized for new embroidery symbols you hope never to see again. On your way out, you pass a girl holding a sash soaked in jasmine. She raises an eyebrow. Did you hear what was in the towel? You pause, shake your head. She leans in, whispering. A message, written in rose oil, only visible when steamed. You blink. She winks, then walks away. You stand in the corridor for a long moment, thinking about how many secrets are carried not on scrolls, but in seams, not in whispers, but in stitches. You head to your quarters, silent. Tonight, you dream of folding endless sheets that whisper back. This morning, you're handed a glass vial filled with pink liquid and told, without irony, don't spill this, unless you want someone to die. You stare at it. It stares back. Well, it glimmers back. Your new assignment, fragrance, anointment, courier, which, in Persian court terms, is basically being handed a tray of invisible daggers and told to juggle them. You are now responsible for delivering scents, ointments, and occasionally toxins between court physicians, concubines, and royal bodyguards. The line between healing and harming is thin, here especially when the perfume smells like roses, but might actually be not. You begin your day in the not a quaint little room of essential oils and herbal sachets. This is a heavily guarded chamber lined with alabaster jars, bronze flasks, crushed petals, and stone mortar. The air hits you like a floral storm. Lavender, saffron, citrus, frankincense. Your trainer is a gaunt man named Arya, who smells like cloves and doesn't blink. This, he says, holding up a vial of golden liquid, is perfume for the queen's veil. And this, he continues, lifting an identical vial, is scorpion venom diluted in rosewater. Do not confuse them. You don't laugh. Mainstream historians agree that Persian royalty used fragrances as both beauty and power tools. Certain oils were said to attract good spirits, others to repel illness, and a few designed to simulate death-like stillness. It was all part of the royal illusion, the idea that even their sweat smelled divine. You are assigned to carry 3 vials: myrrh and almond balm for the king's joints, saffron pistachio hair oil for one of the princesses, and 1 unlabeled jar marked only with the royal falcon seal. You are warned not to sniff it. You are warned again. You nod so fast you almost sprain your neck. You load the vials onto a tiny tray padded with linen. You carry it like it's a newborn tiger. As you walk the palace halls, every bump in the floor feels like a threat, every breeze a betrayal. Halfway to your first delivery, a noble rounds the corner too fast and bumps your elbow. The tray tilts, a vial wobbles. You gasp audibly, but it stays upright. The noble gives you a bored glance and walks away. You consider becoming a shepherd. You finally reach the medicinal wing. A physician with ink-stained fingers takes the first vial and waves you off. Back later, I need basil resin for the rash. You don't ask what rash. You simply nod and back away slowly. Your next stop is the princess's chamber. You're escorted by 2 guards, one of whom insists on sniffing the vial before you enter. He makes a face. Too strong. It's saffron, you whisper. He shrugs. Still too strong. Inside, the princess is lounging on a couch, shaped like a swan. She doesn't acknowledge you. Her maid takes the vial and adds it to a tray of cosmetics. So elaborate it looks like a miniature garden. You see powdered pearls, betel lac, eye kohl, and Oudley charcoal nibs, shaped like tiny horses. Fringe tidbit: Persian nobility believed scent could influence dreams. Some royals had dream specialists who curated nightly aromas to inspire visions of victory, fertility, or divine wisdom. Imagine someone scenting your pillow because they want you to dream about tax reform. Then, you reach the final vial, the one with the falcon seal. You're told to take it to the inner garden, where only select courtiers tread. No one tells you what's in it, or who it's for, or why you're suddenly being flanked by guards who walk a little too close. The garden is quiet, fragrant, a place of calm and power, wrapped in rose, vines, and silence. You deliver the vial to a robed woman sitting under a pomegranate tree. Her hands are stained with ink. Just says, "Leave it by the basin." You do. She says nothing more. You leave. Back in the corridors, you exhale like you've been underwater for an hour. The tray is empty, but your hands are still shaking. You report back to Arya. He gives you a dry nod. No breakage. Good, you may live. Was that last vial? You begin. He raises a finger. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. You nod again. The palace motto, apparently. Historians still argue whether court servants knew the full extent of their roles in royal plots. Some believe many were unwitting pawns. Others suggest the smartest ones learned to read between the tasks and kept quiet to stay alive. You return to the servant quarters as the sun sets. Someone offers you a fig. You take it and nearly weep. As you lie down, the smell of myrrh still clings to your sleeves. You turn your head and catch a trace of rosewater. You dream of vials, that whisper, of trays that tilt, and of gardens where names are never spoken. You've barely wiped the rosewater from your sleeves when the summons arrives. "Harem wing," says the runner, panting. Now, they're short-staffed. Your stomach drops. The harem, that mythical place of whispers and silk and doors that never open for outsiders. You've heard a dozen different rumors. Some say it's paradise. Others call it a golden trap. Either way, you have no choice. You grab a fresh tunic and pray to every deity you can remember. You're escorted through a passage you didn't even know existed. The walls become quieter, softer. Even the air seems perfumed with expectation. The harem wing. No music, no laughter. Just the quiet sound of women speaking in low voices. The gentle brushing of hair. The clink of fine jewelry. And the ever-present flutter of silk slippers on tile. There are courtyards here with caged birds, fountains trickling into marble bowls, and vines that somehow never wilt. The women glide through it like living Artalagan, composed, constantly watched. And you look like a broom someone forgot to lean against the wall properly. Your task today is assistance. That's all they tell you. You're shown to a preparation chamber where several women are seated on cushions, surrounded by you're given a basin of warm water, a strip of linen, and a bar of perfumed soap. Start with the feet, says a senior attendant, not unkindly. You kneel, you begin. It's awkward at first. Not because of impropriety, everything here is ritualized, formal, respectful, but because the woman before you is cloaked in layers of silk and importance. You can tell by the way others glance at her without ever looking at her. You keep your eyes low and your hands steady. Mainstream historians note that the Persian harem was not a den of debauchery, it was a politically charged, highly structured part of the court. Royal women, concubines, wives, daughters all, were assigned ranks. Some wielded power that rivaled generals, others pawns in diplomatic marriages, and each one of them had servants. You clean, you fetch, you carry bowls of fruit carved into lotus shapes, you hold mirrors while perfumes are chosen, you are tasked with threading a needle through a tiny gemstone clasp, and you succeed barely. One of the women laughs softly. He has nimble fingers. Dangerous in a place like this. You don't know whether it's a compliment or a warning. Then it happens. You step backward just half a pace and your sandal comes down directly on something soft, plush, and deeply expensive. A jeweled slipper. You feel it. You feel the crunch of a displaced pearl. And then you hear the sound of the room stop. The woman whose slipper it was stall, poised, expression unreadable, turns her head. Her veil lifts slightly. You glimpse her eyes. And those eyes say one thing. You've ruined her morning. I'm so sorry, you blurt, kneeling, reaching for the slipper. Don't touch it, she says. You freeze. A steward enters a moment later. The woman says nothing, just lifts one finger and points to you. Your heart nearly stops. You may leave, the steward says. That's it, you whisper. The woman tilts her head. For now. You are escorted out so fast, your slippers barely scrape the floor. Fringe detail. Some scholars believe that mistakes made in the harem weren't punished with violence, but with isolation forced service in the silent halls, where no one speaks to you, not even to say your name. A living erasure. You wonder if that's what's coming for you. But no. You're taken not to punishment, but to a quiet side room where an older maid is winding spools of thread. She gestures for you to sit, and then, calmly, begins teaching you how to reattach pearls to velvet. You stepped on something you weren't meant to see, she says after a while, voice low. She wanted to remind you of that. You nod, fingers working slowly. 1 pearl, 2, you're not in trouble, she adds. The rest of the day passes like a dream you're trying not to interpret. You deliver combs. You fetch a vial of cinnamon oil. You braid a length of silk into a ceremonial belt. And all the while, you feel the women watching not cruelly, but curiously. Like you're a card in a deck they didn't shuffle. Historians still argue whether male servants were ever allowed in the inner harem wings. Some say they were always others suggest rare exceptions. Trusted boys raised into service, trained to see everything and remember nothing. As the day ends, you're escorted out through a different hallway, one lined with ivory tiles shaped like doves. A guard pats you on the shoulder. You did better than most, he says. Only 1 slipper. You don't know whether to laugh or cry. That night, you lie awake on your mat, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment your foot crunched royal embroidery. You wonder what would have happened if it had been a necklace, or a letter, or a secret. You fall asleep with your hands curled like they're still threading pearls. You're sore, sunburnt from just thinking about yesterday's courtyard, and still mentally apologizing to that jeweled slipper when your next assignment arrives. Guard quarters, weapon polish, you're on immortal duty. You freeze mid-chew of your breakfast, barley loaf. The immortals, the king's personal guard, the elite of the elite, the men who can split a man's rib cage while adjusting their capes. Fantastic. You're led through the outer courts toward the western wing, where sunlight glints off rows of polished armor. This part of the palace smells different: leather, iron, sweat, and expectation. You step into the weapons chamber and immediately understand why this assignment makes people nervous. The immortals are not joking around. They're taller than you, most of them broader. Some wear thick braided beards, others shave completely. Their gear is meticulously kept, with layers of ceremonial and battle-ready equipment lined up like religious relics. You're not to touch any weapon without direct instruction. If you even look wrong at a spearhead, someone might spear your soul. A grizzled overseer named Ardasha hands you a bundle of polishing cloths and a bowl of oil. Start with the spears, he says. How many? You ask. He smiles. or 1,200. You blink. He walks away. Mainstream historical accounts describe the immortals as a standing army of 10,000 men, always kept at that number. If one died, another immediately replaced him, hence the name. But their ceremonial guard division, the palace residing tip of that lethal iceberg, included the most intimidating humans you've ever seen. You begin on the spears. Each one is taller than you. Bronze-dipped, oiled shafts, leather grips with tiny golden studs. You polish in careful downward strokes. One of the guards watches you, silently, for hours. Fringe detail. Many believe the immortals coordinated not just for battle but also aesthetically matching robes, synchronized grooming, even personalized scents. It's like if a murder squad and a fashion label had a baby. Midway through your third rack, disaster strikes. You breathe too heavily on a dagger handle while buffing the hilt. It leaves a foggy mark. You panic. You grab a second cloth. You rub too hard. The dagger slips. It clatters to the floor. You freeze. A guard turns. He's built like a marble statue that got bored and learned how to kill people. He walks over, picks up the dagger, stares at you. Then, with precise control, he puts it back in its place, turns, and hands you his sword. You look at him, confused. "I saw your polished strokes," he says. "You're sloppy." You nearly faint. But he waits, arms crossed, so you polish, with trembling fingers, and somehow, you do it. Right? He grunts, takes the sword, leaves. You collapse inside, but your body keeps working. Hours pass. Spears, daggers, decorative maces shaped like lotus flowers, completely unusable but visually terrifying. Shields engraved with mythic beasts. You even polish a golden quiver studded with lapis that probably costs more than your entire bloodline's combined property. At one point, a younger immortal offers you a cup of water. You accept. He says, "You should wax the hilts in both directions, for better shine." You nod. A moment later, he adds, "Also, one of these isn't just ceremonial." You glance at the weapons in panic. He smirks and walks away. Historians still argue whether the immortals were assigned personal servants. Some think only eunuchs could approach their quarters. Others suggest high-performing palisades were rewarded with occasional weaponry duties, half honor, half warning. By evening, your fingers are raw, stained with oil and metal polish. Your nose itches from leather dust, and your brain can't stop thinking in rows of spears, rows of daggers, rows of men who could erase you with a nod. Your final task: polish a set of ceremonial helmets made from silver and onyx. It's heavy, too heavy, and then you notice something strange. Inside the lining is a folded slip of parchment. You don't read it, but you see one word barely decipherable in Elamite script. A footstep behind you. A guard takes the helmet, doesn't look at you, just walks away. You keep your head down. Fringe tidbit. Some researchers think the immortals were sometimes used to deliver messages by tucking them into uniform pieces, assuming no one would dare inspect them. You don't plan to test that theory. You're dismissed at sunset. No thanks. No nods. Just silence. You return to your quarters, arms aching, ears still ringing from the quiet tension. That night, you dream of endless rows of weapons glinting in the sun and somewhere. Among them, one sword turning just slightly toward you. You wake up on your mat with every intention of staying there. Your back has formed a philosophical disagreement with your spine. Your hands are locked in a ghostly spear-polishing grip, and your knees feel like they've been personally insulted by each of the 1,200 immortal weapons you spent yesterday buffing into oblivion. But no rest for the courtroom. Today you're summoned to the Apadana Hall, the grand audience chamber of Persepolis. A place so sacred, it has its own rules, its own temperature, and unfortunately for you its own punishments for fainting. Why would you faint? Because your task today is standing. Just standing. For hours, next to a column, holding a ceremonial fan you're not allowed to use. You are now, officially, part of the background ambience. You laugh internally, until you realize that this is one of the most dangerous positions you've ever held. The Apadana is a colossal structuros of columns, massive staircases carved with tribute bearers from across the empire, and ceilings high enough to make you feel like a particularly fragile termite. The king uses this space for formal receptions, ceremonies, and the occasional subtle flex of divine right. Today, he's receiving an envoy from Sogdiana, and it's a whole production. Everything has been cleaned, scented, swept, oiled, swept again, and just for good measure sprinkled with saffron powder. The nobles arrive in shimmering robes, courtiers posed like living statues, musicians strum barely audible notes in the corners, and you're standing behind a column with the ceremonial fan not moving. Fainting in this setting isn't just embarrassing, it's insulting. It implies disrespect. It disrupts the aura of eternal royal calm. It invites whispers like, "Who trained that one?" Or worse, "Is he diseased?" You try to focus on your breath. In, out. Quietly. The heat is unrelenting. You're standing at attention, knees locked, for what feels like a month. A court artist nearby is sketching the scene in ink. You glance down and notice he's drawing everyone except you. That's probably a good sign. Or a bad one. You're not sure anymore. Mainstream historians agree that Persian ceremonial spaces like the Apadana were carefully designed for psychological impact. Tribute bearers would approach the king through a calculated architectural funnel walking upward, toward light, surrounded by images of order, unity, and glorious oppression. All of it designed to say, "Look how massive we are, and look how small you are." You shift your foot ever so slightly. Immediately, a steward coughs behind you. You freeze. Even your blinks are now scheduled. And then the procession begins. You can't see the king, but you feel his presence ripple through the hall. The sound of sandals on stone. The scent of sacred oil drifting toward you. The slight, nearly imperceptible intake of breath from the musicians. The envoy enters, bows, offers gifts. You're still standing. Your vision begins to fuzz at the edges. That's when it happens. Your knees lock. Your head wobbles. And just as the king nods to accept the envoy's tribute, you faint. Not a dramatic collapse. Not a scream or a flop. Just a quiet, tragic, forward tilt. The ceremonial fan slides from your hand in slow motion and lands with a faint poof on the saffron-dusted marble. There's a gasp, a pause, then silence. A steward rushes to you. You're scooped up quickly and efficiently, moved aside like a toppled urn. The king continues. The court resumes its rhythm. You wake in a small anteroom, head pounding. A servant is fanning you with the same fan. You dropped. They say, "Nothing. Just hold out a cup of vinegar water." You sip it and consider your new identity as the one who fainted in the fringe detail. There's a carved relief on one of the Apadana staircases of a man holding a large lotus and looking woozy. Scholars still argue whether he was a real feigning servant, immortalized in stone or just decorative flair with suspicious timing. You're not punished. Not directly, but for the next 3 hours, you're reassigned to wall inspection duty, which means walking the outer perimeter of the and tapping each tile with a brass stick to check for loose vibrations. It's probably made up, but you do it quietly, gratefully. As the sun sets, you glance over the vast steps of the Apadana, now empty, glowing red in the dying light. You wonder if your fall is already forgotten, or remembered forever. You shuffle back to your quarters, knees still trembling. Tonight, no one teases you. Everyone's just relieved it wasn't them. Your legs are jelly, your pride is slightly bruised, and your new nickname in the dormitory is Fanboy. But the palace doesn't care about your emotional state. At sunrise, you're summoned again. This time, inventory division. You think, great, finally a day of counting things. That sounds easy. It is not. You arrive at the palace record hall, a space that resembles a shrine to micromanagement. Rows of clay tablets line the shelves. Wooden styluses are laid out like surgical instruments. The floor smells faintly of ink, charcoal, and people who have never laughed. Your supervisor is a woman named Mistana, who doesn't look up when you enter. You'll begin with a personal effects census. Start with Category 3, grooming implements. We're verifying every item by hand. You blink. Every item. She looks up. You heard me. Category 3 includes hairpins, beard combs, perfume droppers, eyeliner rods, scented silk wipes, royal ear picks, and, yes, the king's ivory eyebrow combs, individually numbered. You are handed a waxed cloth, a counting stick, and a tally scroll already half filled. A single miscount implies theft or treason. No pressure. Mainstream historians agree that the Persian court was obsessed with every item: grain, gold, linen, livestock, incense, even goose feathers was tracked meticulously. Not because they didn't trust people, but because the empire's power depended on showing it could monitor the minutiae of daily life across thousands of miles. And right now, You're counting the king's nail files. You sit at a long table stacked with lacquered boxes. Each holds precisely arranged tools, some adorned with lapis handles, others tipped in hammered gold. You're to inspect, verify, and gently polish each one before placing it in its correct tray. After an hour, your brain melts into counting rhythm. Pin, comb, comb, wipe, dropper, comb, pin, pin, comb. You're halfway through the second tray when you realize something's missing. A beard comb. Specifically, comb to 1B, cedarwood, 3-toothed, silver cap. It's listed. It's always been here, but it is not here now. You double check, then triple check, then hyperventilate a little. You inform us. She stops writing, looks up. Her stylus hovers in the air. Again, she says, you count. Slowly, loudly, still missing. Fringe detail. It's believed that certain combs were blessed and used in specific rituals, especially the morning grooming of the king. Each one aligned with different lunar phases. Yes, you're panicking over moon combs. Mistana size. Start internal tracing. You're handed a scroll with circulation records. Yes, the palace tracks who touches what, when, and for how long. You trace the last listed location of 21B2. The garden chamber, where a royal cousin apparently requested it for eyebrow inspiration. That was 2 days ago. No record of return. You're assigned a guard escort and sent to find it. You walk to the garden chamber, where attendants are folding canopies and brushing petals off the paths. You explain the situation to a bored-looking maid. She squints. A comb. You'll have to check the fountain drain. She dropped a lot of things in there. You'd check. You do not find a comb. You do find a grape stem, a golden ring, a toy bird carved from bone, a half-melted incense cone, a very annoyed frog note cone. You return empty-handed. Ms. Dana says nothing, just makes a mark on a side tablet. Proceed to Category 4. You want to protest, but you also want to live. Category 4 is ceremonial grooming cloths. You spend the next 6 hours measuring squares of silk, inspecting them for defects, and documenting faint stains with codes like NRF, non-ritual fruit, and ERP, unknown red pigment. At one point, you find a cloth with a stitched phrase in Greek. You raise your hand. Miss Dana takes one look and says, foreign embroidery, discard bin 3. Possibly political. You toss it. You don't ask. Historians still argue whether the Persian palace record system was purely practical or partly political. Some suggest the bureaucracy itself was designed to intimidate, showing how nothing, not even a stray eyebrow comb, could escape imperial notice. You finish your shift with a final tally. 173 verified items, 1 missing comb, 14 linen anomalies, 1 insect intrusion, and 0 screaming fit. That's considered a solid day. You return the scroll to Ms. She glances at your notes. You have nice inventory handwriting, she says, almost kindly. Shame about the comb. You nod. Bow. Leave. Later that night, in your quarters, someone taps your shoulder. It's Bazu, the wine bearer from earlier. He hands you a small parcel. Inside, a comb. Cedarwood. Silver-capped. The royal cousin used it to scratch a cat. Didn't want to return it. You stare. He shrugs. That's how it goes. You sneak out. Leave it quietly in Ms. The next morning, your name isn't on the punishment roster, but there's a fresh tally sheet on your cot. Looks like Category 5 starts tomorrow. You're up before dawn. Again, this time not for spears or scrolls or combs. Today, you've been reassigned because, clearly, someone in the heavens thinks you're ready for something more majestic. Your new assignment, Peacock Duty. You think it's a joke. It's not. The royal peacocks of Persepolis are no mere birds. They're ceremonial creatures, living metaphors for divine beauty and kingly grace. They're bred for color, symmetry, temperament, and, according to one handler, the art of presence. They also hate you. You learn this the moment one named Ashvan tries to bite your sandal before sunrise. You're taken to the aviary pavilion, a large garden enclosure near the palace's southern edge, filled with fountains, vines, stone perches, and currently about 24 massive, judgmental birds. They strut like generals, fan their tails like royalty, and shriek like banshees on fire when they don't get their morning melon cubes in time. Mainstream historians often overlook this part of Persian palace life, but fragments from administrative tablets show that royal birds were assigned keepers, given names, and even documented in feeding logs. They were seen during festivals, walking proudly before the king, trailing feathers like portable banners of empire. Your job is to herd them. Not aggressively, not with sticks, with respect. You're handed a curved fan and a handful of dried dates. Use the fan to guide, not swat, says Parvis, the senior bird keeper. They respond to rhythm. Move too fast, and they scatter. Move too slow, and they attack your ankles. You learn quickly that peacocks are unpredictable tyrants in feathered cloaks. They screech, they bluff. One flaps its wings and flies directly over your head, which no one told you they could even do. Your entire soul momentarily leaves your body. You recover by luring one with a date, then cooing softly while waving your fan. It works for seconds before another peacock, jealous and full of attitude, lunges for the treat and sends your fan spinning across the pebbled path. You're not proud of the sound you make. It was possibly audible in Babylon. Parvis your size. You're doing better than the last one. He ran into the fish pond. Fringe detail. One clay fragment recovered near the treasury lists 12 measures of saffron bomb distributed for peacock leg bomb treatment. This suggests the birds received spallival care, including foot salves. You spend the morning coaxing the birds into formation. It's harder than arranging courtiers. They're to be displayed for a visiting satrap's birthday ceremony, and honor reserved only for the most majestic creatures. The ceremony is being held in the Eastern Garden Court. Your task: lead the peacocks there, on foot, without drama. You nearly cry. Take 6, Parvis says. Only the calm ones. That leaves Ashvan, of course. The least calm one. The one who's been eyeing you since breakfast like you insulted his lineage. Still, you go. The procession begins. You walk slowly, gently fanning, treating, breathing. It's going well until a musician, practicing a flute, hits a sour note nearby. The others scatter to run into a rose hedge. One climbs a staircase and refuses to come down. Another disappears behind a pillar and is last seen terrorizing a kitchen servant. You drop your fan, again, and chase. By the time you recover the birds, the ceremony is over. No one's angry technically. The satrap was allergic to birds anyway, but you feel like you've personally failed an empire. Parvis just shrugs. They're birds, he says. Uncooperative, vain, temperamental birds. A lot like nobles. You believe him. He hands you a brush and some balm. Foot rubs, he says. You spend the next 2 hours massaging royal peacock feet. They're weirdly soft, slightly warm. You begin to disassociate. But slowly, as you brush and rub and hum old lullabies, the birds calm. Ashvan rests his chin on your shoulder. You weep quietly. Historians still argue whether the royal animals of Persepolis served true symbolic functions or were just aesthetic indulgences. But in a world ruled by spectacle, even birds had to behave like courtiers. As dusk falls, Parvis claps you on the back. You're not bad, he says, for someone who panicked in the fish pond zone. You want to argue that you did not actually enter the fish pond, but you know better now. In the palace, truth is flexible. Reputation is not. You return to your quarters covered in feathers, exhausted beyond belief. Your bunkmate sniffs, smell like melon and bird sweat. You lie down and dream of flapping wings, sapphire feathers, and a bird named Ashvan whispering state secrets into your ear. You think you've seen the worst the palace has to offer. You have not. This morning, you are assigned to the festival logistics cause. That sounds nice. Festive. Maybe you'll hang some garlands, carry a couple platters, nod politely at musicians. No. What it actually means is you are now responsible for coordinating and part of the largest single-day banquet the Empire has ever thrown, a full day of royal feasting for over 1,000 guests, many of whom do not speak the same language, follow the same dining customs, or respect the concept of personal space. You're handed a chalkboard. It has 2 words on it. Plate runner. That's your role. Your job is to move plates hot, cold, clean, dirty from the kitchens to the ceremonial tables and back again, all day long. You report to a tent the size of a war pavilion behind the main palace kitchens. It's filled with stacks of ceramic dishes, bronze serving trays, red baskets lined with herbs, and a suspiciously aggressive older man named Bahram who has yelled at 3 people before breakfast. You're root for, he barks. No shortcuts, no breakage, no talking to the diners. What happens if a plate falls? You ask. He stares at you like you just asked how air works. Mainstream historians describe Persian feasts as legendary for both their scale and symbolism. They were carefully crafted performances of imperial dominance. Guests were arranged by status. Dishes reflected regions of the empire. Nothing was random, not the spices, not the fruit cuts, not even the order of meats. You begin your route, kitchen to outer hall to eastern table cluster to wash tent back to kitchen, repeat. For 10 hours. At first, it's manageable. You dodge nobles trailing robes. You sidestep dogs begging for scraps. You deliver hot eggplant stews, pomegranate glazed lamb, date pastries, honey-soaked wheat rolls, all without dropping a single fig. You feel invincible. Until the noble pranksters begin. 2 young lords, both with smug smiles and 0 consequences, decide your plate-carrying route is the perfect racetrack for their wine sprint. They sprint past, sloshing purple liquid dangerously close to your tray of boiled eggs. You dodge but they cheer like gladiators. Later, someone shoves a pastry in your mouth mid-run and yells, "Taste test." You nearly choke. Someone shouts. This goes on for hours. And then because this day isn't chaotic enough, the pies happen. One of the entertainers decides it would be funny to begin a noble pie-flinging contest using leftover peach tarts. It escalates fast. You watch a high-ranking diplomat from Bactria take a custard pie to the shoulder. He does not laugh. The room shifts. Suddenly, you are ducking baklava shrapnel, dodging cherry tart volleys, and sprinting while trying to shield a tower of sesame cakes with your body. Fringe detail. There is an unconfirmed Babylonian account that claims one entire Achaemenid feast ended in a spontaneous food battle, so intense it had to be recorded in a tax ledger, because of damages to several gold-plated chairs. You believe it now. Bahram finds you mid-chaos and yells, "Route shift. Move to North Pavilion. They're out of fish." You only to discover the North Pavilion has not run out of fish. It's just that a serving platter fell overboard into the decorative canal, and now the ducks are having a buffet. You spend 20 minutes trying to chase away imperial waterfowl from chewing on the king's butter-poached trout. You fail. Someone blames you anyway. You get sent to the washing line, your new job. Scrape, rinse, and stack every dirty platter that comes in. The smell is unholy. Your hands are prunes. You find yourself elbow-deep in plum paste, thinking, how did I get here? One of the other plate runners collapses on the ground, mumbling about grapes. Someone else is wrangling a monkey that apparently escaped from a diplomat's pet menagerie, and is now eating figs off the display table. You just keep scraping. Historians still argue whether the Persian banquet logistics were handled by military officers or specialized servants. Given how aggressively coordinated this disaster is, you wouldn't be surprised if it was both, probably with secret backup plans in case of food-based civil war. By nightfall, the feast winds down. The nobles stagger off, full and smug. The musicians stop playing. The tables are empty. Bahram and 3 other survivors sit quietly on overturned baskets, sipping watered-down date juice and staring into the void. Best feast in years, Bahram mutters. You nod. I saved a duck. He stares at you. You don't elaborate. You stumble back to your sleeping mat, covered in honey, cinnamon dust, and what you hope is peach filling. You dream of running, forever, carrying a silver plate that never empties. And in the distance, someone throws a custard tart just as you wake up. You wake up with pastry in your hair and a spoon stuck to your back. Somehow, this is no longer surprising. Your joints screamed. Your arms feel like overcooked lentil. Your soul is halfway out the door. But there's no time for pity because Bahram himself slaps the doorway and shouts, "Rising wind. Shame." You blink. Sorry. What citrus walk of shame. He grins. It's your turn. It takes your brain a few seconds and then it hits you. You made a mistake. Yesterday. During the feast, someone saw you place the wrong platter on the wrong table. It wasn't even dramatic. You delivered a honey fig tart to a Lydian delegation instead of the Babylonian one. But because the Lydians don't eat fig skins and someone apparently choked on one, the entire thing is now considered a cultural a diplomatic So, to maintain the delicate illusion of absolute imperial competence, the palace has a method of public apology. Not flogging. Not exile. No scented humiliation. You are to be paraded through the outer corridors of the palace, doused in citrus water, holding a single slice of melon on a tray. You are to walk silently, with a downcast expression, as a living embodiment of oops. Mainstream historians rarely mention this, but anecdotal notes in Aramaic tablets describe rituals of perfumed reproof, Not symbolic corrections for minor servants, blunders, part punishment, part palace, entertainment. You are brought to a courtyard. Several nobles gather. A steward steps forward, pours a jug of lime blossom water over your head, and announces, "He who disrespected the tart today walks with remorse." There's polite applause. You begin walking. The melon slice gleams in the sun. The tray wobbles. Your sandal squeaks. One of the royal scribes claps gently and mutters, "You've got good shame posture." Another noble leans in. "You'd make an excellent melon bearer. Ever thought of it full time?" You nods. You do not break character. Then someone throws a fig. It bounces off your shoulder with a wet slap. A cluster of young pages giggle. You inhale, deeply smelling, like a fruit carton. Continue. This is palace politics at its fringe detail. Some harem scrolls include illustrations of similar shame, walks with servants carrying vases of spoiled milk, dried plums, or even ceremonial leeks as penance. One marginal note reads, "She tripped on a kumquat." Laughter ensued. Your walk ends at the southern bath. A eunuch waves you in, murmuring, "Clean up and go about your day." Lesson absorbed. You scrub the citrus out of your ears and return to the main quarters, trying not to think about the fig. But word travels fast. In the kitchens, someone whistles a tune called Melon March. In the laundry wing, someone tucks a slice of lemon peel into your robe. Even the peacocks look at you differently now. And then you're summoned. A steward hands you a scroll. You're being reassigned. It reads simply, "Waist, escort, Eastern latrine." You stare. "Is this a joke?" you ask. "No," the steward replies without blinking. "You are to assist in the royal sanitary process. This is a sacred responsibility." He says it like you've been chosen for sainthood. You're guided through the servant halls to a part of the palace rarely discussed to waste chambers. You've heard rumors, secret tunnels, clay pipes, marble stools, gold basins. You did not expect incense. Turns out, the king's personal relief chamber is a perfumed, ventilated, multi-room experience. You are there to assist the stool escort team, a discreet group of specially trained servants responsible for ensuring that all wastely solid and spiritually is removed without dishonor. Your job, hold the ceremonial curtain. That's it. Stand, hold, don't breathe weirdly, don't wrinkle your nose, don't faint. Again. You learn quickly that, even here, formality reigns. There is a stool made of white limestone, cool to the touch, and engraved with lotus blossoms. Beneath it, a system of clay drains connected to an underground channel, flushed with warm water and fragrance. Bundles, yes, they perfume the water. Your team includes a water pourer, a linen handler, a ventilation flapper, and you. The curtain bearer. There is a moment of silence before the ritual begins. A priest murmurs blessings. The curtain is drawn. Then, you wait. You are to show no emotion, no shifting weight, no eye contact with anyone, just stillness. Mainstream historians often skip this part of palace life, but archaeological finds suggest that royal waste disposal was a deeply formalized act, rooted in ideas of purity, pollution, and divine hygiene. One Elamite tablet even lists mooned-on latrine opening as an official servant duty. Afterward, you help close the curtain, bow to the now empty stool, and assist in handing off the clay chamber pot to the disposal team, who take it in a procession to a reed-lined compost pit hidden behind the outer garden wall. Then it's done. You return the curtain to its rack. Fold it neatly. Your trainer nods. You did well. You are handed a date. A real one. No sarcasm. A gift. You chew it slowly, reflecting on the fact that you've now assisted in a royal bow ceremony and lived to tell the tale. You shuffle back to your sleeping mat, melan-scented and mentally fried. Tonight, you dream of endless citrus, flying figs, and the most dignified latrine in human history. You wake with the realization that your career trajectory has come full circle from wiping tiles with vinegar to carrying ceremonial waste with reverence. And now, well, today, there's no scroll, no steward, no one standing over your mat with a list. You've blinked into the early light. You've been given a free day. You immediately suspect a trap, but as you sip the morning barley, water no orders, no shouting. Start to relax. You stretch your sore limbs, rinse your robe in a quiet corner basin, and breathe for the first time in what feels like weeks. That lasts 10 minutes. Then a junior steward finds you with an apologetic smile. You've been invited, he says carefully, to complete one final task. You raise an eyebrow. invited. It is traditional. That word again. You follow him, barefoot and resigned, down a familiar winding corridor past the kitchens, the courtyards, the hall of statues. You think he's taking you back to the linen chamber, or worse, peacock duty again. But no, he leads you to a small, stone-walled side hall with a bronze plaque above the door that simply reads, Chamber of Relief. You're not sure what to expect. Ritual nap, emergency oil rubbing. No. Inside is a padded litter, and next to it a modest, beautifully carved wooden stool. Not just any stool, the stool. The king's portable seat of personal purity. You look at the steward. He nods. Serious. Escorted to the treasury building. It's being retired. You pause. I'm carrying the king's. Yes. With honor. You blink. Shouldn't that be a job for, I don't know, 6 guards? He shakes his head. This is ceremonial. Quiet, you've been selected because... He trails off, then simply says, you've lasted. Oh, that's why. You're the last one from your intake group. Everyone else was reassigned, dismissed, or fled. You somehow have survived the daily chaos of combs, pies, fans, linen ghosts, perfume assassins, screaming birds, and 1,000 other indignities. You haven't been promoted, but you've been noticed. So, you lift the stool. It is shockingly heavy, not physically. Symbolically, it's carved from fragrant cedarwood, polished to a shine, with subtle inlays of ivory lotuses and tiny inscriptions along the legs. The cushion is red velvet, immaculate. It smells like roses and responsibility. Mainstream historians never mention it, but certain records suggest royal stools were given names. This one, carved on the underside, is called Gentle Throne. Of course it is. You walk slowly through the servant halls, stool in arms, flanked by silence. A few guards nod. One even offers a solemn salute. A passing eunuch murmurs, Gods bless your spine. When you reach the treasury antechamber, a steward is waiting. He takes the stool with gloved hands, bows, and places it into a side room filled with other ceremonial items. An old comb, a cracked chalice, a single golden sandal. The stool is placed gently upon a silk pillow. Retired, you're told to wait. 5 minutes later, someone brings you a scroll. You open it with numb fingers. It's short, effective immediately. You are relieved of all assigned duties. Your conduct, while imperfect, was persistent. You are no longer required to serve. You stare. No fanfare, no ceremony, no parade. Just done. You leave the treasury and walk slowly across the marble terrace. The sun is setting. The air is warm. No one is shouting your name. No one is hurling figs. A peacock passes in the distance and doesn't attack you. For once, the palace is quiet. Historians still argue whether servants who survived the court were ever truly released or simply reassigned to quieter roles in distant provinces. But as you leave the main palace gates, barefoot and robe slightly askew, you understand the truth. You lasted. You cross the threshold, out of Persepolis, into the twilight, and for the first time in days, months, years, time has no meaning. Here you breathe like a free person. Wind down the marble walls of the palace, grow smaller behind you. The heat of the stone fades. Your blistered feet press gently into cool dust. As the sounds of the royal halls melt into the distance, replaced by quiet wind and rustling leaves. You've survived it all, every awkward ritual, every sideways glare, every impossible task. You've carried weapons, folded sacred linens, been mistaken for a traitor, massaged peacocks, and somehow, you still walked upright through it all. Even now, the scent of rosewater lingers faintly in your sleeve. The memory of a melon slice glistening on a silver tray floats somewhere behind your eyes. It all feels like a story you heard once, told to you in sleep. You close your eyes. The air is gentler now. No incense, no commands, no footsteps echoing toward you with a fresh assignment. Just breath, steady, slow, and free. If you listen closely, the marble columns whisper to no one in particular. The linen flaps in the empty halls. The fans rest on hooks, unmoving. The spear tips cool in their racks. Somewhere, even Ashvan the peacock curls, one iridescent wing beneath him, and settles in for the night. You smile to yourself. You lasted more than a day. You lasted longer than most. And now, at last, you can rest.